The day was supposed to be a celebration of love, commitment, and the future they had built together. But as Craig sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, staring at the email chain on his laptop screen, all he felt was betrayal slicing through him like a knife. The messages were explicit, intimate, words meant only for lovers, and yet they weren't exchanged between him and Jennifer. They were between her and Smith, his best friend since childhood, the man who had introduced them years ago in university. Craig's mind raced as he replayed the last few weeks leading up to this moment. He remembered the late nights spent poring over wedding invitations, the joy in Jennifer's voice when she talked about their future home, and the pride he felt knowing he was building something special with her. And now, here he was, piecing together the fragments of a lie so vast it threatened to consume him whole. How could she do this? How could Smith? The questions swirled endlessly, each one cutting deeper than the last. But amidst the pain, a spark of anger ignited within him, a fiery resolve that burned brighter than the hurt. Canceling the wedding would be too easy, too predictable. No, Craig wanted more. He wanted justice. He wanted everyone, the 300 guests gathered for the lavish ceremony, Jennifer's parents who had poured money into the event, and most importantly, Jennifer herself to witness the truth. As he stared out the window at the city lights, a plan began to form in his mind. It wasn't just about exposing the affair. It was about reclaiming his dignity, turning the day meant to honor their fake love into a public reckoning. And if it meant tearing apart everything they had built, then so be it. After all, there's no greater revenge than exposing the truth. Craig and Jennifer's story began in the bustling corridors of a London university in 2015. He was a quiet but ambitious architecture student, sketching designs late into the night in the campus studio, while she was a driven law student with a sharp mind and an infectious laugh. Their paths crossed through Smith, Craig's childhood friend, who also studied law and often brought Jennifer along to group study sessions. At first, Craig saw her as just another friendly face in the crowd, but over time, their conversations grew longer, their laughter more frequent, and their connection undeniable. Their relationship blossomed naturally, like a carefully nurtured garden. Craig admired Jennifer's determination and wit, while she appreciated his creativity and thoughtfulness. They balanced each other perfectly, her grounded pragmatism complementing his dreamy idealism. After graduation, they moved in together, sharing a cozy flat in central London where they cooked meals side by side and talked about their future plans. For Craig, it wasn't just cohabitation. It was the beginning of a life he had always imagined, a life filled with love, partnership, and mutual support. In 2017, during a sunset walk along the Thames, Craig got down on one knee and asked Jennifer to marry him. She said yes without hesitation, tears streaming down her face as she hugged him tightly. Her parents, thrilled at the prospect of such a union, offered to fund an extravagant wedding, complete with a lavish reception for over 300 guests. Craig, ever the perfectionist, threw himself into the preparations. He spent countless hours choosing venues, designing invitations, and coordinating every detail to ensure the day would be perfect, not just for Jennifer, but for them as a couple. To him, the wedding wasn't just a ceremony. It was a testament to their love, a celebration of everything they had built together. Looking back now, Craig can't help but wonder if any of it was real. Did Jennifer feel the same way? Or was this entire journey a shared home, a lifetime commitment, a grand celebration, nothing more than a facade? The questions haunt him, casting a shadow over memories that once brought him so much joy. It's almost unbearable to think about how deeply he invested in their relationship, only to discover it was built on lies. But those lies won't go unaddressed, not on the day that was supposed to mark the start of their forever. Craig sat in silence long after the weight of the betrayal had settled over him. The initial shock had given way to a seething anger, but beneath that anger was something else, a quiet determination. Canceling the wedding would have been the easiest route, a clean break from the mess that Jennifer and Smith had made of his life. But as he thought about it, he realized that wouldn't be enough. Walking away quietly would leave them unscathed, their secret intact, their lies undisturbed. No, Craig wanted more. He wanted to rip open the seams of their deception and expose it to the world. or at least to the 300 people who were about to witness what was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. At first, the idea seemed absurd. Go through with the wedding? Stand there, smiling and pretending everything was fine while planning some grand act of retribution? It felt like madness. But the more he thought about it, the more it appealed to him. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about control. For months, Craig had meticulously planned every detail of the wedding, pouring his heart into making it perfect. Now he would take that same precision and channel it into something darker, something calculated. If Jennifer and Smith thought they could ruin his life without consequence, they were wrong. And if there was one thing Craig knew, it was how to execute a plan flawlessly. Over the next few days, Craig wrestled with his emotions, oscillating between rage and doubt. Was this really the right thing to do? Would exposing their affair publicly only humiliate himself further? But then he remembered the emails, the cold, clinical words exchanged between his fiancée and his best friend, and the doubts faded. He couldn't let them get away with it. Slowly, the pieces of his plan began to fall into place. He considered several options, confronting them during the ceremony, revealing the truth in front of everyone, or even staging some kind of public humiliation. Each idea carried its own risks, but Craig knew he needed to choose carefully. The moment had to be perfect, timed just right, delivered with maximum impact. As the wedding day approached, Craig found himself consumed by both excitement and dread. On one hand, he was terrified of what might happen once the plan was set in motion. What if it backfired? What if Jennifer fought back, turning the tables on him? On the other hand, there was a strange sense of liberation in knowing that he was taking control of the situation. For so long, he had been the victim, blindsided by the people he trusted most. Now, he was the one holding the cards. By the time the morning of the wedding arrived, Craig's mind was made up. He had rehearsed every word, visualized every step, and prepared himself for whatever fallout might come. As he stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, he caught a glimpse of the man staring back at him. There was no trace of the naive, hopeful groom-to-be who had spent months dreaming of this day. In his place was someone harder, colder, a man determined to make sure that justice, however brutal, would prevail. The morning of the wedding was a blur of activity, a whirlwind of last-minute preparations and final touches. The grand estate where the ceremony was being held sparkled under the golden sunlight, its manicured lawns dotted with white chairs arranged in neat rows. A soft breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, and classical music drifted through the air from speakers hidden among the trees. It was picturesque, almost too perfect, a dreamlike setting that masked the storm brewing beneath the surface. Craig moved through the day like an actor playing a part, his face a carefully constructed mask of happiness. Inside, however, he was a tempest of conflicting emotions. As he stood by the altar, waiting for Jennifer to make her entrance, his mind raced. He could hear the murmur of guests chatting excitedly, see the beaming faces of family members seated in the front row, and feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. But none of it mattered. Not the beauty of the venue, not the joy of the crowd, not even the sight of Jennifer walking down the aisle in her dazzling white gown. All he could think about was what was coming next. Jennifer looked radiant, her smile wide and her eyes shining with what appeared to be genuine excitement. To anyone watching, she was the epitome of a bride in love, but Craig knew better. Every step she took toward him felt like a betrayal replayed in slow motion. He forced himself to maintain eye contact, to nod politely at well-wishers, and to respond appropriately when prompted by the officiant. Yet, with each passing second, the tension inside him grew tighter, coiled like a spring ready to snap. As the ceremony progressed, Craig's senses became hyper-aware. He noticed every detail. The way Smith, standing beside him as best man, avoided making direct eye contact. The subtle glances Jennifer shot at Smith whenever she thought no one was looking. The faint rustle of fabric as the bridesmaids adjusted their dresses. Each observation fueled his resolve, reminding him why he was there and what he planned to do. When the vows began, Craig's voice wavered slightly, betraying the turmoil within him. He recited the words he had memorized weeks ago, each syllable feeling heavier than the last. To have and to hold, he said, his tone steady despite the chaos in his chest. Beside him, Jennifer repeated her vows with conviction, her voice ringing out clearly across the lawn. For a moment, Craig wondered if she truly believed them, or if she was simply putting on a show, just like him. The exchange of rings brought the ceremony to its climax, and as Craig slipped the band onto Jennifer's finger, he felt a strange sense of finality. This was it, the point of no return. The officiant declared them husband and wife, and the crowd erupted into applause. Smiling couples cheered, cameras flashed, and confetti rained down from above. But amidst the celebration, Craig remained frozen, his grip tightening around the small object hidden in his pocket, the key to the bombshell he was about to drop. As they turned to face the cheering guests, Craig allowed himself a brief moment to take it all in. The sea of smiling faces, the jubilant energy filling the air, the sheer audacity of the lie they were all participating in. Then, without warning, he leaned closer to Jennifer, his expression shifting from joyful to icy in an instant. "Enjoy this," he whispered, his voice low enough for only her to hear, "because it's about to end." The words hung between them like a thundercloud, heavy with unspoken threats. Jennifer faltered for a split second, her perfectly rehearsed smile cracking ever so slightly. But before she could react, Craig stepped forward, raising his glass to toast the newlyweds. The guests applauded once more, oblivious to the drama unfolding before their eyes. And as the champagne flowed and the music began, Craig prepared to deliver the blow that would shatter the illusion forever. The reception hall buzzed with energy as guests mingled, danced, and toasted the newlyweds. Laughter echoed through the room, mingling with the strains of a live band playing upbeat melodies. At the center of it all sat Craig and Jennifer, seated at an opulent head table adorned with crystal glasses, fresh flowers, and golden accents. To the outside world, they were the picture-perfect couple, basking in their newfound marital bliss. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, a tempest that would soon tear apart the carefully constructed facade. Craig had waited patiently throughout the early stages of the reception, allowing the festivities to unfold naturally. He wanted the moment to be perfect, not rushed, not chaotic, but deliberate. As the evening progressed, he felt the anticipation building within him, a mix of adrenaline and resolve coursing through his veins. Finally, the time came. The band paused mid-song, signaling the start of the traditional first dance. Guests turned their attention to the newlyweds, eager to see the couple take their first steps as husband and wife. Craig stood up slowly, his movements measured and controlled. Jennifer, caught off guard by his sudden action, looked at him quizzically. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her voice tinged with unease. Instead of answering, Craig extended his hand toward her, gesturing for her to join him on the dance floor. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before standing, her expression wary, but still attempting to maintain composure. As they stepped onto the dance floor, Craig wrapped one arm around her waist, pulling her close enough to whisper into her ear. "This is where it ends," he said softly, his tone laced with venom. Before she could respond, he pressed a button hidden discreetly in his pocket, a small, innocuous device that triggered the playback of a pre-recorded audio file stored on a speaker system planted earlier in the day. At first, there was silence. Then, like a crack of lightning splitting the sky, the room erupted with the sound of intimate voices, Jennifer's and Smith's, engaging in explicit conversation. The recording played loud and clear, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Gasps rippled through the crowd as guests froze mid-motion, their faces registering shock, disbelief, and embarrassment. Some covered their mouths in horror, while others exchanged bewildered glances. The music stopped abruptly, replaced by the deafening weight of the exposed betrayal. Jennifer's face drained of color as the truth spilled out into the open. Her eyes widened in panic, darting between Craig and the stunned audience. "No," she stammered, her voice trembling. "This isn't real." But the evidence was undeniable, the words unmistakable. Even Smith, standing frozen near the bar, couldn't deny the damning proof now echoing through the hall. Craig released her from his grasp, stepping back to address the room. His voice carried authority, cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone steady despite the turmoil inside him, It seems we've been celebrating under false pretenses today. You've just heard the truth about my marriage, a marriage built on lies, deceit, and betrayal. The room fell silent, every pair of eyes fixed on him. I hope this serves as a reminder that trust is everything, and when it's broken, nothing can repair it. With that, Craig turned away from Jennifer, walking calmly toward the exit. He didn't look back, not even once. Behind him, chaos unfolded. Jennifer collapsed into tears, pleading with Smith, who stood rooted to the spot, his face pale and stricken. Guests whispered among themselves, unsure whether to intervene or simply leave. The dreamlike atmosphere of the wedding had shattered, replaced by a raw, uncomfortable reality. As Craig stepped outside into the cool night air, he felt a strange sense of liberation wash over him. The weight of anger and humiliation that had crushed him for weeks was gone, replaced by a cold clarity. Justice had been served, not in the conventional sense, perhaps, but in a way that felt fitting for the situation. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult, he knew one thing for certain. He would never again allow anyone to betray his trust so completely. Professionally, Craig threw himself into his work, channeling his energy into architecture projects that demanded his full attention. Designing spaces became a form of therapy, allowing him to create something tangible amidst the chaos of his personal life. Though the betrayal still lingered in his thoughts, he began to rebuild, not just his career, but also his sense of self-worth. He realized that love, while beautiful, could also be fragile, and trusting someone required vulnerability that not everyone deserved. As months passed, Craig occasionally wondered about Jennifer and Smith. Had they reconciled? Were they living together somewhere, away from prying eyes? Or had the weight of their actions driven them apart? These questions gnawed at him occasionally, but he refused to let them consume him. Instead, he focused on healing, learning to trust again, not blindly, but cautiously, with awareness of the complexities human relationships entailed. The days following the wedding were a blur of fallout and repercussions. Craig returned to his apartment, now eerily quiet without Jennifer's presence, and found himself reflecting on the events that had unfolded. The initial rush of adrenaline from exposing the truth had given way to a strange emptiness, a void where his dreams of love and partnership once resided. He hadn't expected closure to feel so hollow, but perhaps that was the nature of betrayal. It left scars that time couldn't fully heal. Jennifer, devastated by the public exposure, disappeared from sight almost immediately. Her parents, who had poured thousands into the lavish wedding, distanced themselves from her in shame. Rumors swirled among their social circle about the scandal, with some sympathizing with Craig and others condemning him for airing dirty laundry in such a dramatic fashion. As for Smith, he vanished just as quickly, severing ties with everyone they knew. Whether out of guilt or fear of further humiliation, neither he nor Jennifer reached out to Craig, not that he wanted them to. In the weeks that followed, Craig received a mix of reactions from friends and acquaintances. Some praised him for his audacity, calling his actions a masterstroke of revenge. Others criticized him, arguing that public shaming wasn't the answer. But Craig didn't dwell on their opinions. He understood that people would judge him however they saw fit. What mattered most was that he had taken control of the situation when it felt like everything else had slipped through his fingers. One evening, as Craig sat alone in his studio, sketching designs for a new project, he reflected on the lessons he'd learned. Betrayal, he realized, wasn't just about the act itself. It was about how one chose to respond. He could have wallowed in anger, allowed bitterness to define him, or retreated entirely from love. But instead, he had faced the pain head-on, turning a moment of weakness into one of strength. That realization brought him a small measure of peace. Still, there were moments when the memories resurfaced. The laughter shared with Jennifer, the camaraderie with Smith, the countless plans they had made together. Those moments weren't erased by the betrayal, nor were they invalidated by the truth. They were part of his story, woven into the fabric of who he was becoming. And though the wound might never fully close, Craig accepted it as a reminder of both the beauty and fragility of human connection. In the end, Craig emerged from the ordeal changed but unbroken. He no longer sought revenge or validation from others. Instead, he found solace in knowing he had acted according to his principles. Life moved forward, as it always does, bringing new opportunities and challenges. And while the past remained a part of him, it no longer defined him. For Craig, the real victory wasn't in exposing the truth, it was in reclaiming his own narrative and finding a way to move on.